It's pretty safe to say Hong Kong has a pretty strange film industry, but long before China had become the target of Disney's endless pandering attempts to make $1 billion off the Chinese market, there was one major star coming from China's film industry, Bruce Lee, a charismatic martial arts star that was really only matched in fame by Jackie Chan, in terms of the genre. But unlike Jackie Chan, who was able to make dozens of films for both Chinese and American audiences, Bruce only made a handful of starring vessels in his lifetime. Films like Big Boss, Fists of Fury, and Enter the Dragon, to name a few. However, 5 years after his death, Lee's final performance was brought to life in Game of Death. I won't go into Lee's death much, but no one really knows how he died for certain, though it's theorized that he basically died of a heat stroke or some sort of allergic reaction. Anyhow, Game of Death was a film Lee was developing the rough ideas of before his death, where he would have to fight his way through a tower of villains, each with a different fighting style that previous martial arts masters failed to conquer. However, Lee, using his varied skills in martial arts, would be able to make his way through the 5-level tower. However, due to Lee's death, the film remained unfinished, so director Robert Claus and distributor Golden Harvest were forced to basically make a story around the footage which was shot, which amounted to some old Lee stock footage and 3 levels of the tower fights that Lee was developing. The plot of Game of Death we ended up getting was much different from what Lee had originally envisioned. Basically, a mob is trying to kill actor Billy Lowe, who's played by Lee. Anyhow, they ended up shooting him on set in a scene eerily similar to how Lee's son Brandon would eventually die. And they have a fake funeral for him so they can go undercover and fight the mob in secret. This eventually leads to him in the tower where he kills the bad guys and the film ends abruptly. So there's a lot of weird moments in this film, like Lowe's funeral, where they show Bruce's actual corpse, or the aforementioned scene, which eerily foreshadowed Brandon Lee's death. However, probably the weirdest stuff was when they had to replace Lee with various stunt doubles. The martial arts in these scenes are usually fun and well done, much like Lee's own martial arts, but it's obviously not Lee. It's also a little creepy seeing others essentially cosplay as Lee to finish the film. I mean, we've seen similar things done in recent memory with things like Furious 7, which starred Paul Walker after his death, with his brother filling in for the scenes that he couldn't end up shooting. But it was a little different here when you consider the context this was made in. You see, after Lee's death, there was kind of a huge hole left in the Chinese film market that needed to be filled, so studios just started manufacturing Bruce Lee clones, like Bruce Lee most famously. Gold Harvest tried their best to keep out of the trend, but eventually submitted and created this film. Is it a respectful film? Is it a perfect bookend to a short yet iconic career? It's hard to say. I mean, some of the most iconic stuff from Lee was put to film because of this movie. I think when most people think of Lee, they see that striking yellow tracksuit he wears in this film, which was eventually the direct influence for the yellow suit Uma Thurman wears in Kill Bill. Ultimately, the only person who can really tell us what side of the line of tasteful this film lies on is Bruce, who's unfortunately not with us anymore. I know this was a short video, but I just thought the story of this film was pretty interesting. If you want to watch this film and the rest of Bruce's career, I would say track down the Bruce Lee Criterion set, or buy the films through Vudu or Amazon. It's a nice gateway into Hong Kong cinema, especially martial arts cinema, and Bruce Lee lives on as a larger-than-life screen presence that I think is worth looking into.